Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel at Ankara University Distance Education Center. Today, we are continuing our webinars with two important guests from two partner universities. So far, we discussed about different topics and different impacts of Corona pandemic, but today we will talk about our profession, our jobs as the international officers. As the ones dealing with the international relations of the universities, we are also confronting many problems caused by this pandemic, and three of us are from different countries which are also affected so much by this case. And we would like to share our experiences, what we had, what were the challenges, and maybe, if we can, we will share our thoughts about the future precautions to be taken, and maybe some other universities will also join us to share their ideas, to discuss us, and yeah, we will try to find out what will be the best for future similar cases. So let me introduce you my colleagues. Today we have Mr. Constantine Platanos from AGC University, St. Petersburg from Russia. Welcome, Constantine.
Thank you, Onur. Welcome.
Hello. And also we have Mr. Damiano Pinacchio from the University Roma Tor Vergata from Italy. Welcome, Damiano.
Hi, hello, good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So we are the ones from partner universities of an important network. It's UNICA, the network of universities from the capitals of Europe. So we are collaborating in different aspects, but this time we have an important challenge. So it also needs some international collaboration. Maybe just a couple of months ago when we were in Istanbul together during the URI conference, none of us could imagine such a case. So we were there in person, we were exchanging ideas, and we were even in the same conference panel. But now today we have a different case, and we have new tools. Already we had these tools, but now we are using it more often. Today we are here with a webinar. So before going to share our experiences, I would like to introduce you my colleagues. I will tell about their short bios, if you allow me. So Mr. Constantine Platanos, his professional background is a 12 years commitment as international education administrator, blended with successful experience of private entrepreneurship and leadership at breathtaking global projects like Olympic Games in Sochi. He is a Fulbright Fellow and holds MA degrees in International Relations and Higher Education Management. Speaker at the key international higher education events, Mr. Platanos is expert in creating outstanding international student experience and academic partnership. So, Constantine, welcome once again.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Onur. My pleasure speaking here.
My pleasure. And Damiano is a coordinator of the International Relations Office at University of Rome Tor Vergata, Italy. With a background in economics, he gained an experience over 15 years of progressively growing responsibilities in the international cooperation fields. He was member of many working groups and coordinates some of them that develop joint projects in education and research in partnership with institutions located in Africa, Asia, East Europe, Latin America, and Russia. In his job position, he has been leading the international cooperation agreements with foreign universities and institutions. He was one of a group member that fostered the process of internationalization at home, the development of curricula in English, as well as the development of dual degree programs and mobility for students and academics incoming and outgoing. As representative of his university, he is active member and participates in the meetings of many international networks, as well as projects different of Erasmus Mundus as Techno 1 and 2, iBrazil, Bemundus, and others. He has been active in the EAIE community, and for the period of 2018-20, he has been elected as a member of the EAIE Expert Community Cooperation for Development. In May 2019, he was elected as IRO observer in the steering committee and IRO chair of the network UNICA. So welcome once again, Damiano.
Thank you very much. It's a very pleasure.
Okay, our pleasure. So, Constantine, I would like to start with you. When we first started to experience the crisis and deal with this COVID pandemic, how was your universities and particularly your international offices' reaction to deal with this case? And of course, if you have some strategies previously designed for this case, we will be very delighted to hear about them. So the floor is yours. And after our speakers, I also would like to invite our audience to share their questions with us.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much, Onur. Thanks, Damiano. Very nice to see you, dear colleagues who are listening and to us now. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, this situation that we all faced recently was, I think, a big surprise for all of us and for most institutions. I have heard that some universities across the globe were better prepared for this situation, and they had already some strategy or plan B for similar situation. In Russia, we had a little advantage in terms of time because the epidemic effect in Russia started a little bit, maybe 3-4 weeks later, after Italy, and of course after China, and then after Italy, after Spain. So we had a little time to come up with the strategy of reaction. And I should say things were managed in a quite appropriate way for this emergency situation. First of all, the Ministry of Higher Education and Science, which is a governmental federal body that coordinates work and activities, operations of most universities, state universities in the country, came up with some recommendations and some policies that were implemented in most universities. The HSC University is working under the government, directly under the government of Russia, not under the Ministry of Higher Education and Science, but our university was not an exception, and we were following the recommendations, the federal recommendations. And I should say that the lockdown measures in Russia, in Russian universities, started in the second decade of March. And at that time, HSC University went completely online, so we canceled quite instantly. All in-person activities, teaching activities were canceled and shifted to online education. And then further and further, step by step, we were constantly monitoring the situation. Of course, we created a commission. Actually, several commissions were created in the university because HSC is a network university. So we have 4 campuses, and each campus created a commission, like emergency commission, to provide an appropriate response to the virus outbreak and come up with strategies relevant for each region, for each city, because also in Russia is a big country, and the virus outbreak happened not exactly the same way in different cities. In Moscow, the security measures and the lockdown measures were most strictest and more strict than in other cities. So we followed. At the end, what did we have is that all in-person activities, classes, exams were first postponed, then canceled, and shifted to online mode. So I should say that the university is now continuing its operations, and the teaching process is not stopped. It just went online. And from the time perspective of now, after 1 month, 1.5 months of online teaching, I would say happily we managed to do that quite successfully. And the key to that success of switching education to the online mode was that in HSC University, before, we already had an online teaching and online learning platform that was developed before. The content was there to some extent, some lectures were already there. And our faculty was pretty much experienced in teaching online, in the online mode. Because the rector of Higher School of Economics is one of the key driving persons and key driving forces in Russia in terms of online education. So that was what we have now is that all examinations also for the end, it was decided some time ago that this academic year shall end in an online mode. All the exams will be taken online, and also probably the graduation will happen online in some way for the first time this year. So we are now discussing the situation with the next semester, whether this fall semester shall start in online mode or as normal. And this will certainly depend on the general situation in the country and in the world as well. International office of our campus was from the very beginning on the forefront of this response to this major challenge. Representatives, at least 2 representatives of the international office were included to this commission, response commission on the campus level. And I would describe our activities, our response to the virus outbreak in 3 major points or dimensions. So the first task was coordination and I would say rescue missions. It is about providing help and assistance to our students who were at that time in the end of February, in the beginning of March, when the lockdowns started to take place in different countries. Over 200 of our students were abroad on exchange programs, on double degree programs, also on the private trips or internships abroad. So first task for us as the international office was the coordination. So we try to understand and monitor more closely than we do regularly and usually who is where, who is abroad, who is in St. Petersburg, who is in Russia in their home towns. And those students who required help and assistance to return back home to Russia, we provided help. So we were in touch with the embassies and consulate generals and other missions of Russia in the countries to coordinate the rescue flights, because as you may imagine, after lockdowns in some countries, there was no way to get out of the country other than with a special like rescue flight arranged by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that was quite a job that we did on the very first stage of things in this outbreak situation. Then the second thing was, so at the end of that stage, we clearly sorted out and we knew we had a clear list and understanding of location of our students and of their decisions, because some of our students who were abroad on exchange programs, they decided to stay abroad and continue their exchange studies in an online mode.
Yes.
Because that was offered by many universities, including our colleagues and friends in Italy, first of all. Then the other students decided to return back to Russia to stay home with their families and relatives, but still they were going on with online education. So that was very unusual situation that we had to come up with a solution, because usually when a student is on an exchange program, he or she usually is abroad. And then if the student returns to Russia, before we considered that for a longer period of several weeks, the mobility was considered as canceled. Now we had to see what to do with, in this case, when the student has returned to Russia, but is still on the mobility, learning online at the partner university. So we have to come up with some acts and regulations inside the university. And the second thing that we were doing for our community, faculty and students, is managing the financial aid. A cohort of students who were going abroad, who were abroad at the time of the lockdowns, they had to cancel their mobilities and cancel all their commitments and arrangements in the host country and urgently return home. So they faced additional expenses on buying tickets. Some of them were not able to get the reimbursement or refund of accommodation. So many of students faced additional financial losses. So we were trying to find out a way to provide a financial aid to those students to make their lives easier, because also the situation because of the lockdown, the situation in Russia was not that certain at that point. So nobody was in a position to say for sure how it will be with the work, with the employability and so on, with the income. But at the end, we don't have any financial casualties, so to say, in this job. So that was the second direction of our job. And then the third stage and the third direction of our job in this period, I would describe it as intelligence. So we were trying to stay in touch with our partners worldwide to see what are the best practices of other universities that implement different strategies. And we found it quite useful to see and to look what other colleagues are doing in the world in terms of organizing online education, but also coordinating the questions whether the mobility will happen in the fall semester or not, whether the examinations should be switched to online mode or not, etc., etc. So intelligence in the broader sense of this word was very important, still is very important part of our job. So we send a number of surveys to our partners, and you probably received that as well. We were trying to monitor the websites, strategies of different universities that were published, like the response strategies, or just connecting with our colleagues to see solutions. And of course, we also shared our best practices. And I'm happy to be here today in this webinar, because this is a very good example of this job, that we should keep in touch, stay together, and then together we will certainly overcome this indeed unusual situation that definitely will affect and already affects international higher education. But I believe that if we stand together against this situation, if we coordinate our activities and our goals and our responses, then the losses from this challenge for the international higher education will be minimized. So that's more or less what I wanted to commit in a given time.
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity, and first of all, I hope that everyone is safe and sound and well in this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Constantine. Of course, we will go further after some questions, but first we will hear the ideas of Damiano and their experience. So, Damiano, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Honor. Thank you, Constantine, for your very useful information and good experience. So good afternoon to everyone that attending this webinar that is more useful, as Constantine mentioned, to understand how the partners are managing this unexpected situation that create, we can say that can change completely our life in terms of social relations and contact with other person. Just a few words about the situation of COVID-19 spread in Italy. As you know, probably Italy was the first country that had to manage this situation and this epidemic problem. And what happens that we start with this to manage this situation at the end of February. There was many cases, unfortunately, more focused on the north of Italy. And then we were lucky for a certain point because the most focus of the coronavirus spread was in the north of Italy, with some cases in the other part of Italy. In Rome, fortunately, we didn't experimented too much cases and too much infection, but was unexpected situation that changed completely our life. The first action of the government that react immediately to this situation was to create many restrictions to the mobility and to apply the distance, the social distance to people in order to contain the spread of coronavirus. And we can say that after a few weeks, we experimented and we saw good benefits of these actions. And we see now, after 1 month of lockdown, completely lockdown, that started first of all in this red area of where the virus was more present. The situation came better and better, and we now from this week we started what called this second phase. The second phase that means less restriction to the mobility, but to keep continuous the distance, the social distance, and to use the mask. That was something that we just saw that was very common in a life in China or in Asia country where the pollution was very high in order to protect themselves. But we didn't see and experimented in our countries. And now we have to live with this new kind of life, we can say, because of course it seems quite a short period, but we are still in we can say in a lockdown around 2 months, and how was the society in this time that we were many in relation with other people, was completely a change on our habitat, we can say. But we hope that this measure can be very useful, and the medicine that worked very well, and we can see there also what happens in terms of cooperation at national and international level in order to get to catch the best practice and to learn each other in order to fight this real problem that affect all the world. Is not related to one country. And my wish is that we'll go to the end as soon as possible and cannot affect many people. In terms of with the focus on our activities, the activities of a university, as Constantine mentioned, the first reaction of many universities in many countries is to apply many restrictions to the social assembly, we can say. So is the distance, to keep the distance between people and to avoid that many people meet in the same place. So it was a very huge challenges in terms of activities of university and the school at all. And the first step was to suspend all the activities in order to understand how to manage this situation. And in a parallel time, to give the possibility to the university, to the technicians, to the professor, so faculties and staff, to create and to reinforce the channel of distance learning. And in a few days, according with the experience of Tor Vergata, many of the classes was switched to the online format. Of course, there was many professors that was able and to manage this kind of activities, because he experimented in the past, she experimented in the past to give classes in distance learning, but for the other was completely a new activities, a completely challenge. That as first impact creates some problem, but then they put a lot of effort to experience this new format and new kind of provide their job, their activities. In terms of international activities, in terms of international action that we took at the university, as a mobility, and also to in terms of relation with partners and with all the stakeholders, we can say, there was, of course, the first impact was a very high in because we managed at some time different situations. So as Constantine really clear explained, there was different phases that we managed in order to provide, first of all, information to our students, to the family as well, both international students that we host in our university and our students that were at that time in foreign countries. So that was a very hard jobs, divided to different offices that participate to provide, to assist our students and our faculty to manage in a very good way this situation of crisis. First of all, there was the information, how was the spread of the coronavirus, how was the measure that the government, not only the Italian, but also the other government took in terms of take care about their citizenship, and also to the students. the many problems related to the family that was very worried about the situation of the wealthy situation in different countries from their child. But finally, we were lucky in this aspect because we managed in a good way this situation. So at that time, we have like more or less 500 students abroad, and we managed with our diplomacy center in different countries to coordinate, as well as with our Ministry of Education and our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the trip of students that wanted to come back to Italy before the restriction and the lockdown were implemented, and to stay in contact daily, we can say, with the students in order to understand the real situation of the epidemic spread in the country where they have been at the time. So I can summarize some numbers of what happened in this period in terms of mobility. We can say that the 50% more or less of our students stay in the place where they started their mobility. In most of the case, we can say in the 30% of the case, according with the partners, we extend the mobility from 1 semester to 2 semesters, and we try also we are under discussion this situation with our Erasmus agency and also in our university in order to provide to the students that extend this mobility an assistance in terms of financial aid to give them a support. Of course, more or less the same percentage were happened in the overseas the overseas students, students that spend an exchange period outside of Europe, as well as in European countries. So this is more or less the situation in terms of what is going on at that moment for our students. And we also had some of these, we managed some of this situation with the professors that were visiting to other universities. Some of them decide to continue to stay in that place, and very few decide to come back in Italy. This why? Because we can say that many partners react very quickly to the situation and provide very high standard security to our students, as well as our professor that goes abroad. As well as we implement the same situation in our campus, in our accommodation area, where we lock everything and we apply many high standard level of security in order to preserve the healthy state of our students. What happens in another problem that we managed and we are still to try to find a solution is what also Constantine mentioned, related to to some expenses that students had in related to the accommodation, to the flight to come back home, and so on. Because of course, when this is a particular moment, a very unexpected moment, but in some cases there was also the other part of the medal, we can say the other part of the coin, related to the activities of the company that managed the accommodation for students, and other situation related with the expenses that they are for. What we are doing is that we create some we can say working group, not a real commission, that are where are present different stakeholders in order to find a good solution for this situation. We also are prepared for in some cases, and are working with some representative of the government in order to try to focus their attention on this situation, because as you know, and as I think in all the countries that are affected of this epidemic situation, there were some many of the activities was stopped. So the government has prepared a very huge measure in terms of financial resource in order to support these economic activities. And in these economic activities, of course, there is also some of stakeholders that work with the university, and also the university are involved in this discussion. We experimented also a very good impact on a very good behavior of we can say the European authorities related in these cases of university to the agency, the national agency of Erasmus, in order to try to combine the situation of use the financial resources that was in the budget with the possibility to extend the period for students that was at the moment in mobility. This more or less is a summary what happens till now in Italy, and what is the experience of Tor Vergata in this situation. And in terms of perspective for the future, we just have some call conference with some representative of the government, the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of International of Foreign Affairs, in order to discuss what is the real possibility to start again the mobility in the next semester. At the moment, the experts that work with the government are not very sure that there is some possibility in this to start again the possibility of from September. But we are working in a possibility to try to mix what is called a blended situation. So in international courses, that is some part of at the beginning of the next semester to work with the partners to provide these classes in distance learning, and then to try if there is the possibility to start with the physical mobility. Of course, at the moment, the situation seems much better if all the mobility is switched in the second semester of the next academic year. Is more probably that the virus, we hope and we wish that the spread of the virus is very low, and we hope that disappear completely. And of course, we have to continue to have to adapt some personal measure in terms of contain the infection. And but we are quite optimistic that at the beginning of the next year, so in the second semester, the situation of mobility can take this, not the same situation, but can restart the physical mobility. The last point that I would like to underline, as you know, in terms of activities of international offices, in general speaking, as international relation, mobility, and marketing and other activities, recruitment related to the international activities of university. As you know, many of the events that was scheduled in the spring and the summer was all switched in the fall semester. So at the moment, the situation seems that at the end of September, the beginning of October, probably the activities that was squeezed can restart. So we hope so also that we can continue to mix these new tools that I think many of us are experimenting now, or the increase of the call conference and many tools as Zoom, as Skype, as Teams, and many others. And we increase also the number of meeting online. So my wish is that we can restart again to meet each other in person. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Damiano, for your thoughts. After your speaks, I can clearly see that I think the universities more or less took the same way to deal with this problem. So we found more or less similar solutions for this common problem. And also the attitude of the students from 3 universities were similar, because when we applied some surveys to our students who were already abroad, and also for the ones who were just about to leave the country, we saw that the ones who were already abroad preferred to stay there at a rate of 70-75%. So by collaborating with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, we managed to bring the students who would like to come back to the country, and the others are staying there, and we are trying to give them support, at least online and by emails and some other tools. And of course, we are also trying to reimburse some of the extra expenses of the students like you. And it seems that each country, each university, more or less took the same way. And also, I can see that the international offices were a bit more experienced in this case to deal with the situation. So we were, of course, at the beginning, there was a panic by the students, by the families, and also maybe the offices itself. But we tried to, and also we should, stand like the eye of the storm. So the panic is around, but you have to stand still and manage the situation somehow. And in order to do this, I think that to be prepared, well prepared beforehand is important, and this needs a strategy. So I can say that at least after this pandemic, many universities will consider to have a strategy or to have a crisis management protocol for such cases, and will be much more prepared. I hope there won't be any similar cases, but at least this can be applied to any other crisis situation. So we will be a bit more proactive for other cases, and we will be more prepared. So we are learning. Sometimes I describe the situation like a man standing just next to the pool and trying to dive into the pool, but waiting and trying to prepare mentally. The water is cold, or maybe the weather is hot, so not so prepared to jump in. But someone comes and push from behind. So we are like this, I think. So we were just standing there, and we were preparing ourselves for the future mobilities in the new period of Erasmus. So we were preparing ourselves for virtual mobilities, for distance education, but now we were just pushed by this pandemic, and we were in the pool. So we are now meeting our colleagues online, and we are implementing our courses also online. So many things will change, and we will learn through this process, and we will give better services, I think, for the future for the students. So I am receiving some questions from our colleagues from different universities. So if you allow me, I will go on with these. Of course, we are providing some services like online education to the students, but I think if you agree, we should also consider the students with disabilities. So for example, we should implement some tools for distance educations for handicapped students, for example. Do you have some protocols, or do you have some solutions for the students with disabilities who were affected in this pandemic case and had to keep away from the education system? So do you have some specific units, or the international office is dealing with such cases? Maybe Constantine first, and then Damian.
Thanks, thanks, Onur. It's a very good question, and I think that the whole system of online education that HEC University is using is made by default, in a way to provide opportunities and possibilities for disabled persons and persons with disabilities. So I don't think we. I think we have developed some special protocols to help disabled persons who stay in the dormitories of the university to overcome this lockdown crisis, because mostly by developing volunteer services, delivery assistance, and stuff like that. And of course, one of the most important things is mental health assistance.
Yes.
Because what we clearly see, and it does not only relate to the universities, but generally to the real life of most people after sitting in lockdown for more than a month. The mental health issue is becoming for some people is becoming a real issue, because it's one situation when for people who have big apartments, or they live alone, or something like that, and it's completely different situation for families and households who have several children and a limited space of apartment. And the same situation applies to the dormitories, because dormitory is a limited space apartment, and lockdown rules in Russia are pretty strict. So everything is closed, and basically you cannot leave your living space in your apartment unless you need to go to buy grocery or take the trash out. And the people in an advantageous position are those who have dogs or other pets, because it's allowed to go out to the street with your pet. So we pay special attention, as always, to help people with different sort of issues. But the mental health has become even more important.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And Damiano?
Well, we have in our university a special commission that works on services related to disability of students, in general speaking, and with a specific focus that have a representative of different departments, different schools, and also from the central administration, in order to provide good services and help to students with disabilities. We have also a specific department of psychology that provide, in this case, in this time of lockdown, provide us services of support, psychological support to everyone, not only to students that have disabilities and health problems, mental disabilities. And with this specific case with mental disabilities, we have an equipe of professors and researchers that works together with these students, and also involve some students, and that create a very good tools that work very well, and give the possibility to these students to have to provide their capabilities. These are theatre, pathological theatre, that works very well, and managed by this kind of professor. Of course, at this time of lockdown, especially in this specific sector, they cannot meet in physically, but I know that they experimented in a virtual distance some kind of shows and activities that work daily with them. But I would like to underline these services that could be useful also for other colleagues and other partners, to provide a specific support, psychological support to every student, especially the foreign one, the youngest one, that is attending a bachelor program and is still in the country, that in their mobility, or who started this kind of program, is blocked in this country, in foreign countries.
Yeah,
so because it's far away for the family, in such cases have some difficulties and some limitation of connection to be connected daily with their family. So I think that they are who probably needs more support in this, for this aspect.
Okay, thank you. Another question from our audience. Do you expect or plan any changes in your cooperation with your academic partners, especially for USA and China? So did you find any chance to discuss on this? Will this affect your future collaborations?
Thanks, Onur, again. I dare to be the first to answer this question again. It's a very good question, and I would answer it in the way that we, together with our partners and colleagues in both in China and in the United States, we found this period of time, I would say, even beneficial. In terms that we just had more time to work on the arrangements and the agreements that we started or were planning to start before. To give a precise answer on the question, at our side, I don't think that this current crisis will affect mobilities with China and with the United States in any negative way, because we still consider this development as a temporary issue that is not the first of its kind in our life, unfortunately, and probably not the last one, but it will not prevent the mobility or any way the international cooperation with those countries. So I'm happy to say that we managed in this 1.5 months of the lockdown, we managed to push forward several agreements with our partners in both in China and in the United States that we were working on before the lockdown. So we still hope that in the next cycle of mobility, whenever it happens in fall semester or in spring semester, we will be in position to offer more opportunities to our students to go to those destinations. Yeah. At least that's where we stand now.
Okay, thank you. Damiano?
Well, I don't think that, I agree completely with Constantine. I don't think that this epidemic situation and crisis can contribute in a negative way with the relationship between our partner in both countries, United States and China. And we experimented with the partner and these countries a very good cooperation, very good reaction to the crisis, and they provide, as we and as many as we say, the university distance learning program, and they were available to take care about students, and we are in continuing. We cannot say daily contact, but the contact is very, very intensive with
Yes.
the partners in these two countries. So I think that can increase in such way the cooperation with the partners in this university, and to enlarge also the partnership with other university, because we experimented in a good way, and I think that will not be the only tools of cooperation, but it can be very useful, and the technology can help too much to increase and enlarge and reinforce the cooperation with these two countries, but not only.
Yeah. In our case, actually, we also didn't have any institutional decision for future collaborations, but as a note, surprisingly, we are receiving some new offers from China to build new cooperations. So I think so far, within last month, we received 5 of them. So we will see, we will discuss among us and also with the departments, and yeah, we will decide to go on. So another question, which was already answered by Damiano, so maybe I can only ask from Constantine. Do you think there is a chance that international mobility programs are back in their full format one day? If yes, then when it can happen? And if not, what are the options to change or substitute such programs? So Damiano also mentioned about it, so maybe we can hear the opinion of Constantine.
Yeah. Me or Constantine, what you prefer?
Constantine, please.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for this question. I think that there is no other way than the way that the international mobility and international exposure programs will restore to the numbers before the crisis, and will overgrow those numbers. Because the value of international education, the value of international experience is, this value is not affected and cannot be affected by this kind of development. In contrary, I think that crises, global crises like that, like this one we face now, so those crises only raise the importance of international experience. And I just technically, I don't see why the numbers shall not restore. At least at our side, in our campus, we were finalizing the call for applications for the outgoing mobility for the fall semester on the peak of the lockdown. So the deadline for the second wave of applications was in the second half of April. And what we saw is that the number of applications and the applicants was, even in this situation, slightly higher than the number of applications in the same period last year. Because even though it is uncertain whether the mobility will take place in the fall semester or will be completely moved to the spring semester, but I think that students and universities and professors everyone believes in the value of international education. And no pandemic crisis can affect that.
Yeah, we have a similar case. We are just also carrying out our elections and placements for the coming year, and only a few withdrawals took place. So it's not more than a regular year. So it seems that everything is working quite similar like the past. So Damian, also, if you'd like to add anything, please feel free.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think that we can international experience is very important nowadays in the curricula and the experience of students, and is very useful when entering a job market. And but honestly speaking, I think that to restore the number previous the epidemic crisis, I think that it will happen not in the next academic year, but in the next one. So 2021, 2022, in my opinion. In the next academic year, we can say a very low mobility in the first semester, and with this implementation of the experience in terms of approach to listen other professors that have a different background and participate in these virtual classes, what is going on and is going to develop in a very slowly step is that what is called virtual mobility. Probably in the next semester and the first semester of the next academic year, we can see more situation of virtual mobility. And the physically one probably will start in the second semester, but gradually. Of course, I believe too much in the physically mobility, because when you have such experience in another country, you have to learn not only about the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge that can be provided you by a professor with different approach and different culture, but also you have to live the life of the other countries with the tradition, with the food, and everything related with. And probably we will experiment what is called in this green mobility. It is a mix between the virtual mobility and the physical mobility, in line with the sustainability development goal, because I just would like to mention that this crisis could be also an opportunity to see the world in a different way, and to give a good support to change some of our behavior of the past. But it's important. It's very important, the international experience. Very, very important.
Definitely. So I have to make a little explanation. There was a break during our broadcast, but now we recovered and we are back. So I don't know if you realized, but we had a small break on our live session. So anyway, in relation with 2-3 different questions, there seems to be a decrease, but we shouldn't be afraid of it. So it won't be a huge or dramatic drop, but also there will be a recovery anyway. And also, will your institutions be flexible about the application procedures, such as deadlines or principally deadlines, or maybe extra quotas for the ones who were already abroad and who would like to extend their semester, or who had to come back and revisit your institution in the coming period. So maybe this can be an over quota, or there may be some delays during the applications. Will you be flexible on this?
Yeah, certainly. And I think that in general, this current crisis already shows that we institutions can be much more flexible than we are, or than we were before, in terms of deadlines, different sorts of operations, numbers, and other things. So that's partly why I'm quite confident for the numbers of the mobility to be restored, because we have been discussing with some of our partners the opportunity to send more students in the fall semester by adding the places, the quotas, the numbers of students who had to cancel their mobility in the spring semester, or to withdraw from this mobility. And most of the partners said, yes, it's fine, it's okay. So I will be just happy if we can keep with those extended numbers in the future, because seems that there is no reason to shrink that if you have a capacity to do so. The same with the deadlines. Yes, we have some deadlines which are technical. Like in our case, we have to apply to the ministry for the visa invitation for a specific period, like no later than 20 working days before the start of the academic year. This deadline we cannot make it more flexible. But other than that, it seems that we also implement some new technical solutions that help us to be more and more flexible. So in other words, I think that this is a very good situation and a good advantage for us all also to review and maybe revise the regular operation protocols for the mobility and for some other parts of operations. Okay,
thank you. And Damiano?
Sorry, it was at this disconnection, and I didn't hear the question. May you repeat that, please?
Sure. The question was that due to this extraordinary situation, will you be flexible on accepting students with a delayed application period, or will you give some extra quotas if requested by partner universities?
Yeah, I think that we usually apply some kind of some space of flexibility to halt what we can say the bureaucratic situation. But in this case, I think that also the other authorities, like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Education, and the diplomacy, consulate and the embassy in foreign countries can apply a certain space of flexibility in order to have the international students, because consider an aspect very important, that there is some people, students, and of course family is scared now to also if they want to have an experience abroad. But of course, at the moment, with different situation of the spread of the coronavirus in different countries in a different way, they are afraid. And but the answer definitely is yes. We can apply, and we want to apply, and we try to this space of flexibility, and try to also convince who is a little bit rigid to the rules.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one last question. We mentioned about virtual mobilities, and we were getting prepared for this for 2021 period. And now we are a bit implementing virtual mobility. We have some Erasmus students who are here and taking classes from us or from their home universities and combining with their studies. And what do you think about virtual mobility? What it will bring, or is it something to replace the real mobility? Or, for example, from my point of view, I can say that it would be better if it will be a blended mobility, so partially virtual, partially in person. So what do you think about the virtual mobility? So will this be the future of Erasmus, or what do you think about this?
Yes, it's again a very good question, this is very personal, but I do not really believe in the virtual mobility as a substitution for like traditional in-person student exchange programs, because the value of this international experience, international exposure, is not only about taking courses or classes from a different university, from different academic culture. This is, it's not an innovation, basically, because you have all the opportunities for this already now. And we had it before by Coursera, edX, and other platforms that would provide online courses from different universities. But still, people want to go physically. And I think that the largest part, the biggest part of the value in the physical mobility is the immersion in culture, the opportunity to know, to learn the culture, the daily life, the behaviors, academic behavior, social behavior, like daily behavior of people in the region, in the country, traditions and so on. When you have this experience and this understanding, then you can work with those cultures and those people remotely, online or in mixed teams or whatever. But unless you have this physical sense and physical contact with people and with the country, with the history, with the place, I don't really think it will work. I think there will be an attempt, by an institutional attempt, to implement virtual mobility in the same way as there will be definitely an attempt to introduce more online teaching and maybe substitute some in-person way of teaching with online. But in terms of mobility, I don't think it would work. And also, a few days ago, I just read an article, a survey made by, I think it was ISEF company, that was doing a survey on on students who were planning to study abroad in the fall semester. And the results were presented in a way that around 70% of all students said that they would still prefer in-person mobility to any kind of online teaching and online mobility. And half of those students they said they are ready to start with online mobility, but with a precondition that at some point they will switch to in-person mode. And the other half said they would rather wait for a year that when the situation gets back to normal, or rather the new normal, And so they would absolutely prefer to wait for in-person mobility opportunity instead of having this online. So I strongly agree with that.
Yeah, I agree too. And Damiano, please.
Yeah, of course, I mentioned also before that is the physical immobility has many aspects that is going on and give this experience background to the students when they are immersed in a new culture. They live in a new country, they can understand the culture, the tradition, and everything related to this aspect, not only related with classes that they can get from another university, because more or less the program are quite similar, we can say, with some difference. But what is different is the approach of a single professor and a researcher that provide the knowledge to the students. In terms of the exactly definition of virtual mobility, we can say that is not, it started born as a meeting of groups of students working in a common project from different countries. And in terms of faculty, is an interaction between professors in order to provide at the same time courses with a physical presence of a professor and another one that interact with him in distance learning. So we can say in some of people that is very close to the idea of the climate change, they believe that is a very good and important tools in order to reduce the emission of travel pollution and more specific on this. Some other things that is an innovation, use the technology in order to enlarge the number of students and that could be involved in this experience, because we have to also to say that many of the students of university students will not get an international experience for different reasons. One of them is more related probably to the financial possibility, if they didn't get any kind of support of scholarship, because in some cases happens because they didn't are not eligible to some program, they cannot be involved in this experience. So I think that there are many points in favor to the development of virtual mobility. Also is very hard to implement it as an innovation tool, not only to have distance classes, so distance program, distance learning program, because that one is not virtual mobility. So it means a lot of efforts for students, a lot of effort for professors. Of course, in terms of the value added that can give an international experience, the virtual mobility cannot provide. These, we can say, skills that can give to students that participate to such kind of program. Probably what we can see in the future is a combination of both. As you mentioned, Honor, at the beginning, is something really blended, some part in distance and some part in presence. But again, what is important to underline that the virtual mobility in this definition, in this focus, is not only to participate to courses provided online by a university, but is the work that you're doing in a team, in an international team, in terms of work students and also from the faculty.
Thank you. Thank you. Dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you very much for your participation to our webinar. It was really, really enjoyable, and also you shared your valuable thoughts with us. So before saying goodbye to our audience, I would like to receive your final words and conclude the webinar. So, Constantine.
Yes, thank you very much, Onur. Thanks, Damiano, and everyone attending this webinar. I think every system, including the system of international higher education, needs needs a good crisis sometimes to shock and to stress and to test the system, because otherwise we know it very good from our history of the Soviet times, when a system is existing without major shocks for a long time. It's not very good for the future development. So I really hope, it's a very sad situation with the virus outbreak in the world, and we should not make any fun out of that. It's very serious. It's a big disaster for the healthcare and for many families, for many people in the world. But if we take the higher education as such, and even more narrow thing, international higher education, I think this is a very good time and a very good opportunity to think, to review our policies and protocols and things. Because when you work just as we work every day, there's no time to stop and to think, to see, to look at your job from a perspective. And this time provides us with exactly this kind of opportunity, when you can stand still for a moment, analyze, think, and then decide where to go, left or right, or straight forward or backwards in some cases. So my hope, I have two hopes. My first hope is that this crisis will end sooner or later, better sooner, of course. And the second hope is that we will learn the lessons that and take advantage of the opportunities that this situation gives to us. And then when we get back to the new normal, this new normal will be better in every sense of this word, more beneficial, more efficient, with a clearer vision for all of us, for administrators, for our professors, for students around the world.
Thank you.
Thanks for this opportunity, and I wish at this time to everyone to stay safe and well.
Thank you. And Damiano?
Yeah, I agree with Constantine that when crisis happens, can of course have some collateral effect that is related to the health of people, and unfortunately also to the death, many deaths that happens around the world, because this is a healthy crisis. But when crisis happens, can shake, we can say, our life and especially our habitat, that in some cases change completely. So if you look at the future, this usually a crisis can give for a future perspective two channels. Or problems, create a problems, and people can see a problem in the future, or opportunity. And this is the vision of optimistic and pessimistic people. So I think that is when this kind of crisis happens and shake our life, we have time to think. and to have a long reflection about what we would like to do, what we would like to be in the future. And I think that we can learn a lot about this crisis, about what was our habitat in the past, and what could be in the future. So to catch the opportunity that this crisis gave us in terms of relation with the people, in terms of humanities, in terms of tolerance, in terms of cooperation, because we have seen in this time that people that probably didn't say hello each other, also if they live very close to one to another, they cooperate, they give their availability, their time to the other. So, and this is very important. This is a very arise the humanities that in some cases we lost, but not because we are bad person, but just because as arise in this discussion, when we are involved in the daily life, we are running everywhere to think in a different way. We didn't stop to believe what is important, what are the value of the life. So my wish is this, that for the future we can have a more deep thing in thought in some aspects that we didn't give too much consideration in the past. Also, if we touch, but in a very easy way. Thank you so much for this opportunity and to have this discussion with you. So I hope that we can meet again in another kind of meeting like this, and I hope as soon as possible to meet you in person. So thanks to you first of all, and to other people that attending this very interesting discussion.
Thank you, dear friends. Thank you very much for your time, for your presence here, and I wish you healthy days, and I also hope to meet you in person soon after everything recovers. So thank you once again. Dear audience, dear friends, dear followers of our YouTube channel. So today we are concluding our webinar and hope to meet you in our next webinar on next Thursday. So Ankuzem YouTube channel will be here with different new topics, and please continue to follow us. So until that time, so stay healthy and stay safe, stay home. Bye-bye.